Hi, and welcome back to Mind Revolution podcast. Yes, I mean, if you're a new listener, you probably don't know this, but we just rebranded to Mind Revolution podcast. It was actually the Kija Gold podcast before. So I'm supposed to give you guys like an intro on why we have decided to change the name of the podcast. Well, my name is Kija Gold, and I have been going by that name since 2017. And I felt like it's a very nice brand name. I wanted to really brand everything to have Kija Gold. And to be honest, I was 17 years old at the time. So pretty much just trying to copy what I have seen others do, like other like top people. Obviously, I don't copy. Yeah, yeah. Other top people do, trying to just build my brand, trying to gain some form of identity. And also, I didn't know what I wanted to post on the podcast. Initially, why I started doing the podcast was because somebody just told me, oh, maybe you should start a podcast because you have a nice voice. But then I also wanted to talk about a lot of things that were happening in Poland, as I was, still a student at the time in Poland. So I was really big on activism and a lot of the things that a lot of people wouldn't really expect from me. I think because I was really more into makeup and fashion, so I was really a little bit controversial. I mean, people who were close to me knew that I was a little bit controversial, but like the reason why I started the podcast was because I really wanted to have like a one-on-one conversation with people about like really controversial things and really really important things. But it didn't really go well because I ran out of ideas, I ran out of topic, and the brand, the podcast wasn't having its own identity, so it wasn't really like easy to keep up. But now I am currently handling, what do I call this now? But now I have changed the name of the podcast. But now I have changed the name of the podcast. And why did I choose the name Mind Revolution Podcast? Well, I got to a stage in my life where, before today, I was really just someone who was going through a lot when it came to my mindset and how I view the world. I mean, I had a very, very in depth perspective of life just because I never really looked at things the way most people looked at them. But what I had to do was to reclaim power over my mind by actually feeding my mind with the right information, the right things that I needed to see, the right kind of motivation, the right kind of inspirations. So that is why Revolution is the name, because revolution kind of means like taking back control, and it's pretty much just taking back control of the mind. And what I want to do on this podcast is tell you guys or share with you guys insight on the things that I have learned along the line, the things that I have deep insight about now, and the things that I feel like will go a long way in actually helping people out there to navigate life as well. I mean, not everybody would enjoy what I talk about, but I'm pretty sure one or two people would find it really helpful. So that was the whole idea. And you're welcome to Mind Revolution podcast. So we're starting this off with season two, instead of just continuing season one. Everything under season one, we're gonna just leave it as the Kija Gold podcast and move on with season two and start afresh. So yeah. So today I'm going to be talking about relationships in 2023. I'm really just going to be giving like chit chat, just casually talking about these things. I don't really have a lot of points highlighted of what I'm going to say, but I do have quite a few things that I have gained some insight about, and I feel like I should share. So, what have I learned about relationships in general? Well, what I know about relationships right now is that they don't work as much as you would expect. I mean, I'm not sure at what rate relationships have got declined, or successful relationships have declined, but I do know that they don't necessarily work. Like, you'd say a lot of people you look up to and you expect them to be some form of inspiration to you, to your life, and to your relationships. But then they get to a point and then they break up and then they divorce. Aside from that, a lot of people that I know personally are not in a relationship, or not in a healthy relationship rather. Most people are single, most people are just trying to figure out life. The few that I know that are in a relationship have probably been in the relationship for a long time, or they just got into the relationship. So but for most people, they're currently just, just trying to figure out life. And the reason I think that that is so is because I think a lot of us, we grew up with this idea that we needed to be in a relationship, we needed to have somebody. Aside from that, we grew up in the era of social media where everybody is posting about their relationships online. And whether I would like to admit it or not, it does get into our head and it does get into our heart, and we start to feel like, okay, this is probably something that I want. Maybe not consciously, but the subconscious might want something like that because it does look nice, it does look good, and the average human being wants to give love and receive love back. So it's typically understandable why anybody would want to be in a relationship. But what makes it different for this generation is the fact that we had social media growing up, and we have ingrained these thoughts into our personalities, into our mindset, into our subconscious. And as we have grown older, we have failed to really see the real ways that relationships actually work. A lot of people just think that relationships now are just for the likes, just for the clicks, just for the aesthetics. I mean, as long as we look good together, we're in a good relationship, right? But what people did not know, what we hadn't realized, maybe most people haven't until now, was that the relationships actually require a lot of work. And relationships is just having a relationship is just like having a job, right? You do have to attend, you do have to be present, you have to perform some certain tasks, and make sure things are functioning. But that's where most people fail with relationships in our generation, is that we don't realize the kind of work that comes with relationships. So nobody prepared us, or nobody prepared themselves for the work, and when they get into a relationship and see that it actually requires work, then everybody's like, oh no, I'm not doing this, I don't want to do this. But what I also realized is that a lot of the work required to make a relationship work is not actually work on the other person, like the partner. It's actually work on yourself. A lot of us don't actually realize that we need to work on ourselves to be able to make a relationship work, which is crazy. But that's the truth. If you yourself are not healthy mentally, psychologically, spiritually, you are not going to be able to be in a healthy relationship. It's just the truth, no matter how much you try. Because you need to be in a good place mentally, financially, spiritually, for you to actually be in a healthy relationship. And I'll explain why. Um, for you to actually be able to give somebody what they deserve from you, you actually have to be in a good place. And don't get me wrong, you don't have to be fully healed to be in a relationship. So what I realize is that nobody is ever fully healed, right? Nobody is actually ever perfectly healed, because a lot of the traumas that we went through as children, a lot of the things that we're going through, we actually go through it on a daily basis. Like, everybody is still constantly growing every day. So one thing I've noticed about relationships is that if you yourself are not willing to grow, you're not willing to work on yourself, you're not willing to improve on yourself, you cannot be in a healthy relationship, because you are not going to flow with how life is moving, actually, because life itself grows, life itself increases, life itself changes. And if you're not flowing with how life flows, you cannot actually be your full self. You cannot be at your best human capacity or at your best self, because you need to improve as you go. So healing is a big part of it, and a lot of people don't actually work on themselves before they get into relationships, or even while being in a relationship. They just feel like, okay, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to be, and there's nothing you can do about it, which is very, very wrong. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is why I think everybody should remain single and court until for marriage. So if you've not heard of courtship, I think it's something that was more familiar in the past, right? Let me call it the ancient days. It's when a man comes and sees a girl that he wants to be with, and she also wants to be with him, and then they start to work towards marriage. So the whole relationship is has the end goal of marriage. It's not like the typical let's see how it goes or I'm not where I need to be yet. It's always someone who is fully established in himself and knows what he wants to find somebody that wants the same thing as he does, and then they go into working into towards a marriage. And I think that that works better than the casual relationships, and this is just my personal opinion, because a lot of times, see, first of all, I just want to say, like, most of us that have tried to do relationship without any direction are not in the relationship right now. If you're really honest with yourself, if you look around, a lot of people that have tried to be in a relationship without any direction, without any end goal, are not in that relationship right now. They have actually ended that relationship. So, first of all, a goal, an end goal, or a common goal is very important in a relationship. And what bigger common goal can you have than to want to start a family together and get married and be, tied to each other for the rest of your lives, really? What kind of bigger goal can you have? That is what I think. I just think everybody should do that. And firstly, just starting off with a goal. The second thing is because I feel like that also helps people to be able to keep themselves in the right place, to keep themselves in the right position, to be able to receive a relationship, to be able to be in a relationship. So when you have it in your mind that you cannot be in a relationship or you don't want to be in a relationship unless you're working for marriage, and the average guy that will approach you is not approaching you unless he wants marriage, while you're growing and working on yourself, you're going to be trying to prepare yourself for marriage, not just to be someone's roommate or just to be an average girlfriend. You're actually going to be preparing yourself for the long term things, for the really important things. So that is what I think. I think for those two reasons, 2 points of mine, I believe most people should court and wait until marriage. Let me know what you think. Um, but you know why? But somebody would say, why marriage? Somebody would say, why must it be marriage? Some people don't want to be married. I feel like marriage is aside from the fact that it's ordained by God. Marriage it's a desire for every human being. You might not think you want to be married now. When you get to 80 years old, you probably wish you got married. A normal human being, an average human being, does not want to be alone. Everybody wants to at least have one person that is their person. So for me, I feel like the reason why I want marriage, or the reason why I feel like most people who believe in God should focus on marriage, is because God had an ultimate plan when He put marriage in place. As we all know, God sees the present, the past, and the future, and He already knows what was going to happen, what is supposed to happen before it happens, and He Himself ordained marriage. So I don't think we have any rights in any way to question the institute of marriage, especially marriage before God, not in the court. And the reason why I think God wants us to get married is because he knows that human beings have this desire to be loved and to be appreciated and to feel in a void that they have. So he feels, or he knows that the best thing for us will be to have our own person that we can work on things together rather than moving from one person to another person. And I think also because humans are actually more spiritual than we are physical. Let me explain. We are actually spirits in a vessel. We are consciousnesses in a vessel. So a lot of the things that happen to us are happening more in the spirit than we can see in the physical. A lot of things that are happening in the physical actually happen in the spirit before it manifests into the physical. That's why people believe in manifestations, meditations, and all sorts of faith and religion, because the spiritual realm is real, right? So because of that, when you are in a relationship or an entanglement with somebody, there is a spiritual thing at play there that you cannot see, that you're not aware of. And the reason why I believe God wanted marriage was so that you can have two people whose spirits are not contaminated with other spirits, with other people, and have those two people work together to actually bring forth the life and the purpose of God on earth, rather than having them waste their energy, their spiritual energy, their spiritual aura, from one person to another person to another person, then leaving that person, leaving that self drained, leaving that spirit drained, and not able to even fulfill his own purpose on earth because he has already drained that spirit. So it's important that we are able to connect with one person's spirit and partner our spirits up, kind of form like a big ball of, united energy, and work together for our purpose, so that when we meet the person that we are compatible with, we are fully equipped, we are full, we are charged, and we're ready to actually put in the right amount of effort, put in the right amount of energy, and and prioritize the things that we need to prioritize for that relationship. So that when we meet the person that we're actually compatible with, our spirits are charged, our minds are full, our bodies are equipped to be able to prioritize the marriage, prioritize the future, and actually be your best self in that relationship. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that people shouldn't date while they're young, but I feel like going into full-fledged relationships while we're young, especially for me, has not been productive in any way. In fact, it tore me down more than it should have when it didn't work. I don't know about most people, but for me, it is. I wish we could go back to the days where, we were just prioritizing what really mattered, which is courtships. But, well, I'm saying this now, I could be in a relationship tomorrow. Who knows? But it's just a thought that comes to my mind when I think about relationships. And I just wish that everybody was courting to marry. But the society we live in, before you find somebody that wants to court you to marry you, you're your own, really. Like, you're not going to find somebody that easily. So I think, when you're in Rome, you act like the Romans, but you actually have to be your best Roman rather than the worst, right? I believe that one of the reasons why relationships don't work in this generation is mainly because of our perspective on why we are in a relationship in the first place. Like I said earlier, a lot of people are in relationships just because everybody else is in a relationship, right? Because everybody else is doing it, because it's a social media trend. Many people don't even know why they want to be in a relationship. Aside from that, we have this desire to be loved and give love, but we don't know how to tame it. We don't know how to use it. And we don't know actually how to, make use of it to its best capacity rather than to its worst. So a lot of people don't have the right perspectives when going into relationships. And a lot of people are just there because they just want to have somebody to keep them company, or to deal with them, or to serve as their trauma dump, right? Because I had somebody have his own traumas that he hadn't healed from, and as soon as I got comfortable in the relationship slash courtship, he immediately started to trauma dump on me, and I was like, no, we're not doing that. Like, I understand that you've been through things, I have also been through things, but we have to productively help each other heal, because I'm not fully healed, neither are you, but I'm not going to now become your therapist. So a lot of people go into relationships wanting a therapist, wanting a mother, wanting a sister, rather than a partner. That perspective needs to be changed. I feel like what we have relationships for are for the bigger purpose of what God wants us to do on earth, which is reproduce his people, make more Christians, make more God-loving people that will be here to serve God, to glorify him, and to shine the light in this dark world. That's one of the many purpose. But for me, I believe that the main reason why human beings exist is to glorify God and to shine our lights in this dark world. So I believe that also falls into place when we are going into marriages and relationships. The main purpose is to build a nation, to build a people that will carry out that same purpose for God. But even if you're not looking at relationships with the faith-based aspect of relationship. I mean, this is now a faith-based podcast because I did talk about the changing of mindsets, but I did not emphasize on faith because we are really not going to really just make that the main platform of the program. We want to be able to accustom to every single person listening. But faith is a very important factor because you cannot have life without faith. You cannot have life without God. So somehow we are going to fall back into faith. But the perspective of relationships need to be changed to what God has already ordained for the purpose of relationships. And there's something that people fail to understand and people fail to accept when it comes to relationships, right? People always leave out the God aspect of relationships. You know, people apply God in their work, you apply God in your life. You think, okay, because you're going to just wake up, pray, go to church, you're a good person, you're a good Christian, you don't hurt nobody, you don't murder nobody, that you know your relationships have nothing to do with God. But it very much does, and that is why earlier I said there's a great purpose that God has for marriages. But the thing that people fail to do when it comes to their relationships is to involve God in the relationship, to make God the foundation of a relationship. And I feel like if you make God the foundation of anything, and it's not even just what I feel, is the truth. If you make God the foundation of anything and everything that you do, it will come to pass, it will work for good. And making God the foundation is not just, okay, we're going to say we are here for God and then not actually put in the effort. No, you actually have to move in the direction of God. Your heart has to be in the right place of, you know, being in right standing with God. And if your heart is in the right place, if your heart is prioritizing God and loving God first before your spouse, then there is no way that relationship will not work. But then first of all, like I said earlier, you need to work on yourself, meaning that you need to work on your relationship with God. And one thing I've realized is that your relationship with God also determines your relationship with yourself. If you don't have a good relationship with God, you typically don't have a good relationship with yourself. You typically don't know how to love yourself because you don't know how to receive love from the one who made you, the one who placed you here. So eventually you lack purpose, you lack vision, you end up being lost and not being able to understand who you are on earth as a person just because of that lack of connection. But once you have that connection, once you have that resolve with God, then you put that, you don't even need anyone to tell you, you don't even need to consciously decide to put God first in your relationship or make God the foundation of your relationship. It will just fall into place like that. So that is what I think that most people lack, and that is a perspective that people need to think on and think about when it comes to relationship. Even if you don't believe in God, think about a common factor in your relationship that is supposed to be more prioritized than just you and the partner, because as we all know, love is not enough to make a relationship work. Love is an action word, but it's still not enough. There has to be a good and solid foundation. And a lot of people have solid relationships that do not really involve God, but there are principles that they have applied, biblical principles that they maybe not even aware of, that they have applied and have made that relationship work. And these are things that you need to actually research on, work on, and figure out what are those principles. What is that thing that is common with people who have a foundation with God in their relationship, and people who don't but have a working relationship? What is that? What are those principles that they apply? They are biblical things and references that God has given for us to abide in when it comes to relationships. But I think everybody has their own personal take on this thing, so I'm not really going to emphasize on what you should do, but I feel like this is something you should think about when you're reclaiming your mind. This is a Mind Revolution podcast, so we're trying to be honest with our minds, we're trying to be honest about life with ourselves, and think about the right things, ask the right questions, look into the right perspective of things, rather than ignoring it or just looking away, right? So my thoughts, another thing that I've come to realize about life in general is I don't think that we have one soulmate. I don't think anybody has one soulmate. That's another perspective that I would like to give you. I don't think we have one soulmate. I think we can have multiple soulmates. because what I realize is that every soul is actually intertwined to each other because it comes from the same source, right? God. So you can tell me that you have just one similar soul like yours. We are all the same. We're all similar. What makes two people compatible for a relationship is the connection that they can have with themselves in the physical and in the spirit. But we need to break the physical barrier to be able to get to the spiritual connection. And a lot of people, what makes them, for me, what I've realized in the people that I've called my soulmates is that we have the same, we're inclined to function and life in the same way. But I don't believe that that one person was my soulmate. And I don't believe my soulmate has to be somebody that I'm in a relationship with as well. My soulmate can be my friend. I have a friend that I consider my soulmate because we've had what I don't have with a lot of people. And I believe that that is what classifies a soulmate. But you can find it in more than one person. It's not limited to one person. And when you shift your mentality on that, I believe that you will begin to attract the right thing for yourself. Because a lot of things that people fail to realize is that you use your mind to limit your own blessings. You use your mind to limit your own progress in life just by what you believe in. When you believe that something is a certain way, that is how it's going to be for you. So when you have limiting beliefs, your life is going to be limited. So I have changed my mind. I'm thinking I have one soulmate. I believe we have more than one. I believe you can have many. And that's how it's going to be. I believe I'm going to have many soulmates. And I believe I will still find the person that I would marry, the person that I'll spend the rest of my life with. And that person will be my soulmate. I will not manage and I will not have to not compromise. I will not have to manage somebody. I would actually have somebody that is my person, somebody that I can be with. And another perspective on that is that when you do think about it, the matter of having soulmates, when you do think about it, the place where you are right now is not the same place that you were before. And if you met your soulmate before, that person you were that connected with that person is not the same person you are now. So as you are now, you can't find a person that can connect with the person that you are now. And then you can still find a person that you can connect with when you evolve tomorrow, right? So the mentality on soulmates have to change. You have to believe that as you're improving and as you are growing, you can find somebody that would always be in the same page with you. But when it comes down to marriage now, what changes when it comes to marriage is when you find somebody when you are at your best self, at your most improved version of yourself, when you find somebody who connects with you, how you are, and that person wants to be with you. So as you are evolving, you are actually evolving with the person. You are both developing your spirits, you are both developing yourselves mentally, psychologically, and then being able to also have that common goal will help you guys achieve that together while growing together, while going through life together to get to that stage where you are actually like, yes, I have, my person. I am successful in a relationship, in a marriage. But I haven't been married, so you don't have to take my word for it, but that is just a perspective that I have that I decided to share with you guys. So let's talk about the effect of your mental health in relationships. Like I said earlier, you actually have to be your best self to be able to have a good relationship, right? But like a lot of people today have very, very sick mental health. Most people are not really doing okay, and it's mostly okay for females to see a therapist than it is for men. And that makes a lot of men go into relationships thinking that they're looking for a therapist, thinking that they're looking for a mother, instead of actually just going to deal with the trauma that they have. And that affects relationships, whether we would like to think about it or accept it or not. So like I said, you have to work on yourself as a person. You have to work on your mental health as a person. You don't actually have to be fully healed to be in a relationship, but you have to be in a good place with yourself, in a good place with life, in a good place where you have a good relationship with God, enough to be able to feel like I can actually accommodate somebody else in my life. I can actually balance the equation with my work, with my mental health, with everything in my life. For me, my mental health has changed drastically when it came to God, because as soon as I was able to have a good relationship with God, I stopped expecting certain things from people, like feeling validated, feeling loved, and all those kind of basic needs. I now get that from God directly. So I'm not looking at it from other people. When I now look at people that I'm thinking to be in a relationship with, what I look for in them is now different than what I would have looked at when I was still mentally unstable, right? So having a good mental state would actually help you look past the bare minimum. Instead of just looking at the mundane surface level things, you're going to be looking deeper to find, okay, what substance does that person have, and what kind of soul does that person have, and how you can connect your soul to that kind of soul, and what kind of souls will you also breed in the future if you are thinking about having kids. So it's very important to have a good mental state. But another thing people fail to realize is that money does have a play in relationships. What do I believe? Why do I think that? Like many of us girls, like many girls actually, do not want to be in a relationship, or do not really expect to be in a relationship with a guy that has money, or they want to be in a relationship with a guy just because of money. A lot of girls do that because they did not receive the kind of love and the kind of provision from their fathers, or maybe they did to too much excess, to too much assets, to too much, to a higher level of receiving that they should have, that they now automatically expect any guy that they're with to supply that same kind of level of treatment. It's usually more common with girls who haven't received that kind of provision from a man before. They've not had that kind of male figure or masculine figure in their life, so they expect to receive that from a man because that's what they have ingrained into their mentality, and that's what a lot of people have told them about relationships. So from a female's perspective, money has a part to play in relationship, meaning money has a part to play in relationships, meaning you as a female, if you do look at guys and you expect them to give you some kind of provision, you have to change your relationship with money. You have to change the way you look at money. Money is not just attached to men. Money also comes to women. You have to fix that mentality for you to actually look beyond the mundane, look beyond the surface to find somebody that can connect with your soul for you to have a better relationship. And as a guy, most guys feel like they need to have money to be able to afford a relationship, to be able to provide as well, because it goes both ways. A mentality goes both ways. It affects both kinds of people and all kinds of people. So even as a guy, you have to look for value in yourself that is not attached to what you can provide. You have to look for value in your being, in who you are, rather than what you bring, what you can provide. And it goes the same way with females, but for men, but for men, it's also very crucial, because most guys that look at money as a determining factor to be in a relationship actually lack some sense of self-value, some sense of self-worth, and they seek validation through their provision, through what they can actually, the numbers that they have in their bank. So that mentality itself needs to be changed on both parts for our generation to be able to flourish when it comes to relationships. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say for today's podcast. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, you can message me on Instagram, at MindRev Podcast, or you can send an email to no. If you have any questions, you can just send me a DM. If you have any questions, thank you for listening to me at the Mind Revolution Podcast. If you have any questions, you can send me a DM on Instagram at MindRef Podcast, and I would surely answer your DMs. If you have any suggestions as well, you can also just leave a comment on this video on Instagram as well. You can watch, if you're listening on Spotify, you can watch this video on YouTube. If you're listening If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen on Spotify, and you can find clips of this podcast being uploaded within the week, and on different times on on Instagram as well, so on TikTok as well. So yeah, that's all I have for today, and I'm very very appreciative of you listening. I hope you come back next time and you listen again.